Well, here we are on a Sunday night. It's the 13th of October, and we're looking ahead to an autumn chill spreading across much of the eastern half of the United States, and that includes the deep south. This will be the coldest air of the season so far. Some places up to the north in northern New York and northern New England might see their first snowflakes out of this. So we'll cover it all tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And he's back from what is a probably been a very busy couple of days for you, Mr. Rayo.
Really? What was the couple of days? I went to a concert last night.
Oh no, I'm talking about the aurora borealis and the comet.
Well, I haven't seen the comet yet because, again, I went to a concert last night. And we didn't, when my kids bought the tickets, they didn't know that there was going to be a comet to look for last night. But hopefully the weather will improve and I'll get a chance to see it finally sometime during the week. I don't have high hopes tonight, obviously, zilch. Tomorrow and Tuesday, maybe more zilch because we're stuck in an unusually chilly and unstable air mass, Joe, and that unfortunately usually means in the afternoon and early evenings, self-destruct sunshine, leading to a lot of low clouds that develop or pop up, especially in the midday and afternoon. And things will start stabling out a bit on Wednesday, and by Thursday and Friday and next weekend, it's looking real good. It looks like we'll have some dry weather, high pressure building in, milder weather too. I must tell you that I see temperatures the next 2 or 3 days that are going to be mostly for high temperatures in the 50s for a high.
Oh yeah, actually, even here in North Georgia, we've had for the last 4 nights consecutive, we've had lows in the upper 30s. So it's been cold here in the nighttime and early morning hours, and then it's been basically warming up back to about 70 in the afternoon. But even here too, for Tuesday and Wednesday, doesn't get out of the 50s either, and we'll probably see temperatures down close to freezing on a couple of nights this week. So I'm looking ahead to freeze warnings and frost warnings.
I mean, just a week or so ago, a week or 8 days ago, or something like, you know, we go outside and I would say, well, what was our low temperature this morning? I'd look at our weather station and I'd say, oh, it got down to like 45. And that was pretty good.
Yeah.
45 degrees. That's it. Well, I must tell you all of you right now that the temperature here at the house is 48 degrees, and it's not.
How high did you get today?
I don't think we got much above 60. Well, Mrs. Ray will probably get up now and take a look and see what the high
Well,
was.
I mean, I know in upstate New York, north of where the frontal boundary is, which is, kind of lying just to your north, a lot of places up around up and along I-90 didn't even get out of the 40s today.
We did have a break or two of sunshine during the early part of the day. I mean, during the first half of the day, I'm saying to myself, what happened? It was supposed to be like mainly cloudy today, and we were supposed to have rain. We hardly got any precipitation. We got a little bit of rain this afternoon, hardly enough to. And I see now Renata says 64 in Putnam Valley. That was probably when the sun came out earlier on in the day today. But then once it clouded over, everything cooled off, and again we had a little bit of precip. Now there might be. I threw it into the forecast out of respect for the Storm Prediction Center. There might be a rumble or two of thunder tonight, and primarily because we have this cold front working its way through during the next few hours, and so there might be a little bit of convective activity, but that's going to be about it. Tomorrow, dry, and it looks like it's going to be dry right on through the entire week coming up into the weekend, and as chilly as it will be, it's going to be unseasonably chilly, especially Tuesday and Wednesday, and cold down maybe in where I live, Joe, maybe down near freezing uh, Tuesday and Wednesday night. It's going to warm up quite nicely. We'll be back maybe near 70, I think, by next weekend.
Yeah.
That'll be nice to see.
Well, if you were, you know, just to your south, across northern New Jersey and point southward today in central and South Jersey, it made mid to upper 70s. Southern Pennsylvania the same. Trenton got to 80 today, and it was mostly 70s all the way down into Virginia and North Carolina down to me. It's not especially, we're not seeing 80s or anywhere. It's not other than that odd 80 at Trenton. Um, so the air, we're at a kind of time of year now where it's a little hard, it gets harder to warm up. It's not like it's late August or early September where you'd probably see 90s running around. There's nothing like that anywhere. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was the fact that, aside from tropical systems, and we had to wait a while for those to get going, uh, since the beginning of September, the weather pattern across much of the northern mid-Atlantic, the southern New England, and down through the deep south has been very, very quiet. It's the tropical systems brought big rains to the southeast, but that was just sort of the odd occurrence in what has been a pattern of a very dry and a very storm-free pattern for the last 6 weeks or so, and it does look like it's going to continue.
Yeah, the 6 to 10 and the 8 to 14 day outlook, and I might add the 3 to 4 week outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, all are stressing below normal probabilities for precipitation in much of the Northeast and Mid Atlantic. And so that means that, heck, we may go right on into November in this pattern of unusually dry conditions. No sign of any kind of significant rainfall in the foreseeable future, believe it or not.
Well, we do have a frontal boundary, and I'll bring it up on the screen. And while we take a look at that, just really quick, I want to say hi to everybody on the chat board, and those of you who are watching in the background tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Welcome. We love having you here. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. We're on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. and sometimes on Friday and Saturday when there is a storm running around, which we don't have coming up. And if you like the show, of course, hit the like button. The 21Z surface map has a stalled frontal boundary running right across Long Island Sound, right over New York City, cutting across Pennsylvania virtually in half. And there's a couple of waves. One's analyzed right smack in the middle of Pennsylvania, another one in northwest Pennsylvania. And then you got this long cold front through southeast Ohio, cutting through central Kentucky, western Tennessee, southern Arkansas, back down into Texas. And I'm just looking at the temperatures behind that front in Oklahoma, in Missouri, in Arkansas, in the 80s there. You have to really go. You start to go up further north. Once you get into Iowa, you start to see the temperatures, at least at 5 o'clock this afternoon, 4 o'clock Central Time, in the 50s, lower 50s in Minnesota, and then it gets even cooler when you get toward the high center. Uh, we just have to wait for this system that's in the east now to get up into eastern Canada because that's when we'll start to see that colder air begin to funnel down. That's going to start to happen during the day Monday.
And also, let's not forget that tomorrow and into Tuesday, Joe, the winds are going to become a factor beginning tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night and on into Tuesday. I think we're going to be seeing winds gusting at times 25 or 35 miles per hour out of a westerly direction. So, the winds, along with the unseasonably chilly temperatures, is going to be the story. And so, I mean, I have already see a fair amount of the leaves on my lawn, and I'm sure I'm going to see more. But I'm also going to see them flying around in the air, I think, these next couple of days with those gusty winds as well.
Southeast, a beautiful day today. Made it up mostly in the lower 80s from parts of North Carolina, but definitely over South Carolina and Georgia. North Georgia and the mountains of western North Carolina, the exception, was mostly in the 70s there. And we've got low and middle 80s back through Alabama and Mississippi, upper 80s and even some lower 90s and some middle 90s. Actually, you go down into Texas, there were some 100-degree readings in the interior, some between San Antonio and Dallas. Not exactly sure which points these are that you see that 100-degree, 103 in one spot. all again ahead of this cold front. And then I'll just, going up, you can sort of see the temperatures cool off a bit when you get into the Pacific Northwest. Much of the weather across the country has been relatively quiet and storm free. When we look at the watches warnings, the only standouts really are the freeze warnings for the Dakotas and for Nebraska and parts of northwest Kansas. We've got frost advisories surrounding that into Iowa and into northeast Kansas. Otherwise, watches and warnings few and far between. We've got some air quality issues due to some wildfire action going on in parts of the northwest. But other than that, it's just pretty silent from the standpoint of the weather. And again, that east-west frontal boundary kind of stands out on the satellite because that's where the cloud line, northern Pennsylvania, northernmost New Jersey, the Hudson Valley into Connecticut points north as a heavier overcast, and south of there and going west back to the Mississippi River and beyond, not a cloud in the sky, a little bit of cloud cover back into New Mexico and Colorado and parts of Utah, also in the extreme northwest corner of the Pacific Northwest. But that's about it. And just looking at the radar, there is a line of showers and some storms now forming. They look like they extend from Binghamton southwestward across central PA into southwest PA. There are a few thunderstorms in there. That's probably what SPC was looking at when it did its came out with its risk. There's not a whole. They got the risk all the way down almost to me in the Central Appalachians, and at least from what I'm seeing right now, there's nothing much going on the radar from West Virginia on southward. It's all up in northern New England and upstate New York where you're seeing, north of the frontal boundary. That's where you're getting into the rain. Excuse me, and also in southeast New England around Cape Cod, Rhode Island, and southeast Connecticut, we're seeing some rain, some heavier rain showers there, and back and through Michigan and Wisconsin. So it's all kind of pinned right close to the Canadian border.
Yeah, and like I said, I out of respect for the folks over at the Storm Prediction Center, I said, okay, we'll mention the possibility of a rumble or two of thunder. And again, most of this activity seemingly is going to be taking place to the north of the I-84 corridor. Like I live south of I-84, and quite frankly, it doesn't look like there's much of a chance of any kind of precipitation breaking out here over the course of the night, but you never know. Now, the one thing that's interesting is I looked in Les Plumes, Joe, and
Hmm.
it indicated that there was a bump up to about 400 in the MU CAPE category. MU CAPE standing for most unstable convective available potential energy. That's a measure of the instability in the troposphere. It's a value that represents the total amount of potential energy available to the most unstable parcel of air found within the lowest 300 millibars of the atmosphere. So, in other words, let's say within 10,000 feet of ground level, the atmosphere in the coming next several hours is going to be somewhat unstable, and enough so that, if everything came together, it might just tip the scale in terms of maybe a thunderstorm. So that's why if you're out and about, especially up to the north and west of the New York City area, you might hear a rumble of thunder, see a flash of lightning. Don't be surprised. That's that frontal system acting as the giant meteorological swizzle stick, stirring the air up, unstable air up, and maybe providing us with a touch of showery or thundery weather. Once that goes by, however, that's going to be it. Now, for the rest of the week, it's going to be a matter of gradually destabilizing the atmosphere. It's going to be a slow process. As I said, tomorrow and Tuesday, gusty winds out there, especially in the afternoon and early evening. But then things should start calming down as a rather large area of high pressure builds toward us from the north and west, from the Great Lakes, from the northern plain states for later in the week. And that high is going to be, it looks like, right over our part of the country next weekend. And while I really don't like to make forecasts much beyond 4 or 5 days, I will say now with guarded optimism, next weekend looks spectacular from start to finish with lots of sunshine, clear sky, and temperatures also on the rise after some unseasonably chilly weather. By next weekend, we might be talking about temperatures up near 70, which will feel quite nice.
Marginal risk for severe weather from northeast PA, southwest into eastern Tennessee, and general thunderstorm risk that goes a little bit further south than that. There's just not a lot going on the radar. It's hard to imagine we're going to see anything out of this. And as far as rainfall over the next 7 days, northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, a half to three quarters of an inch, a little bit more up the St. Lawrence Valley as you head up to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. There's some areas of an inch and a half plus, also in parts of southern New Brunswick and down near Nova Scotia. You're looking at three quarters of an inch to an inch and a half. But from southern and southeastern New England down to Virginia, we're talking hundredths. Okay, and then from there southward down to northern Florida, and then west of Louisiana and up the Mississippi River into Iowa, very large geographic area where no precipitation is forecast for the next 7 days, or very little in the central and southern Appalachians. We've got pockets of a half inch plus, and this is going on right now over the lake. So this is a lot. Whatever you see in the Northeast and in the Great Lakes is front end loaded. Um, the, uh, the the Western Plains looking at three quarters of an inch to an inch and a half there, also up through the central and northern Rockies, also getting further up into northern Idaho and pushing up into Canada. And in the Pacific Northwest, it looks like several to perhaps more than several, maybe several to 6 inches of rain being forecast for parts of northwest Oregon and on up through western Washington and continuing up into British Columbia. So, uh, a couple of things, Joe. The GFS continues, keeps trying to spin something up, but as we've gone through the weekend, and certainly from late last week, this is all part of this gyre that's been sort of sitting over Central America that's been just spitting out disturbances. It's kind of shifted a little bit further south. So if something does come out of there, which the GFS still insists on developing some sort of tropical system, it basically takes it into Nicaragua. I mean, now there's a couple of things going on that in the tropics that I want to point out. So if this were to develop, it looks like it's getting suppressed too far south. And if you look up toward the Gulf of Mexico, okay, this is the southern edge of this big high. I mean, it really bills down into the Gulf of Mexico and down through Florida later this week. It's hard to imagine how anything is going to be able to penetrate through that. Okay. And I just so you can see the map, the high at this point. This is for Friday. It's centered on the West Virginia state line. And you do have easterly winds coming in off the Atlantic. The other view that I think is really important, because there's been some on and more so a few days ago, not so much now. A lot of stuff on the internet. Uh, I'm sorry, on social media uh, about another storm coming and all the rest of it, which is just nonsense at this point. But if we take a look, one of the things I want to just point out. Here's another thing I want to show. This is the precipitable water. Okay. And this is a stark difference from what we saw just a couple of weeks ago. This next high is pushing drier air. I'm trying to get this. Let's get this to load here.
Joe, you there? Oh,
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me? Are you hearing me?
for about 10 seconds. For 10 seconds, I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
It's like,
So on this precipitable water map, and this is really important for folks that are looking at the Gulf Coast or the Gulf of Mexico with regards to anything that's going to happen down the road. Uh, This is back from last Thursday, and you can see Milton at this point is northeast of the Bahamas and moving away. Dry air all through the southeast, down into Florida, but more importantly, dry air down in the Gulf of Mexico, almost down to the Yucatan Peninsula. And with this next high building down, dry air everywhere in the Southwest Atlantic, down into the Gulf. I mean, that dry push, that makes a big difference here with regards to anything. If something were to try to penetrate further to the north, it's going to have a lot of dry air to fight. And I just and that's not even something that I'm worried about. because everything with that, with what's going on across the United States and across the Gulf of Mexico, the area of lower than normal pressures have shifted further south into the Caribbean, which means that anything that forms, I mean, if it goes into Nicaragua, then it's going to come out on the other side in the Pacific. And there's one other system that's going to be crossing the Atlantic along about 20 degrees north. And you can see it here that most of the models are picking up on, trying to develop and taking a small, uh, strong tropical storm or a minimal hurricane north of the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico and into toward the Dominican Republic late this weekend, this coming weekend, and then that is going to wind up getting ejected northward as well. I mean, there's nothing. You look at this. Look at this from the standpoint of the U.S., Joe. Have you ever seen the U.S. covered in dry air like this from coast to coast?
Wow.
I mean, look, this is really amazing. Uh, just starting from back from Thursday. I mean, look at this. There's just with dry air, and as one air mass goes out, another dry air mass comes in. Uh, all of this precipitable water is almost non-existent across the U.S. for the next. I'm up to day 11 here, day 12, day 13, day 14. I mean, look at that. It's you don't see that too often. If you're going to see it, you probably would see it in, you know, mid-September to maybe late October, early November. So it's kind of doing it in the seasonal time frame correctly. But this is impressive that there's just no moisture anywhere.
Very extensive dry air. And it looks like toward the end of that period, 14, day 14 or 15, the Gulf Coast tries to moisten up a little bit, but not by all that much.
No. And take a look at our system in the east now, because this in the northeast. Tomorrow morning, there's a low sitting near Albany that goes up into eastern Maine. There'll be some colder air coming down as the upper low strengthens in places in northern New York and northern Vermont and northern New Hampshire, northwest Maine could see some snow, maybe even a few some areas in southern New York, in the around Binghamton, those areas with elevation could see some snow shower activity. We'll get our front through. It's going to blow away to some extent tomorrow. It will get on the windy side, and then you've got this big high coming down. One more trough to work through probably on Tuesday, as you said, the atmosphere unstable with self-destructive sunshine, and then things settle down. Look at this. I mean, it's basically from the Rockies east. There's just nothing. Uh, just really nice October fall weather. And then once the high settles in the east toward the end of the week, we'll probably warm up, as you said. So certainly could see 70s back this next weekend. And just looking down the road, I'm trying to find a cold front. I mean, there's nothing of consequence until the latter part of next week, around October 23rd or 24th. You got something coming into the West Coast along that time frame, and there's stuff going on off the southeast coast with whatever tropical system or some sort of cutoff that forms. But I mean, this is as bone dry as you'll ever see it. Does it is it going to stay that way forever? No, but we're going to have to wait for it to change. And you got this strong westerly flow across the United States. It's hard. You're not going to get coastal storms with this. Trough, then ridge, then some troughing, then another ridge, then another trough. Yeah, I mean it's just a very blasé pattern.
Blase,
Well, after the tropical storms, I guess that's a good thing, right?
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Well, I
know,
mean, something you enjoy this, blase pattern or this boring pattern because, as more than a few people on the chat board have noted, it probably ain't going to last very long. Or, indeed, we may make payment for this and sometime down the road. Of course, many of you have already said, let's make it snow. One of somebody on the chat board said we really don't want this dry pattern in January or February, right? I mean, we could have it cold, but if it's dry,
right.
you're not going to get any of the white stuff. So we'll see. We'll see
Well,
what
just
happens.
just just because we're getting it now doesn't mean that it's going to, that's not necessarily a harbinger that okay, we'll get it all out of the way now, the storm-free dry pattern, so then we'll have plenty of, it's not like you're borrowing from a bank here. Okay, they come when they come. Yeah,
You're
they just yeah. There's no trade-off. So we'll just have to wait to see what the pattern evolves when we get toward the latter part of the month and going into November. Eventually, it'll change. It's just we don't know. Eventually, could be a very long time.
I see that Dr. Cohen is mentioning the fact that there's some good news, perhaps, for all of you winter weather enthusiasts. He's saying that Ural blocking doing its magic, and Siberian snow cover has had a burst over just the last several days, putting some nice distance from last year's anemic pace. And his research shows that more snow in Siberia, more winter cold and snow elsewhere, wherever elsewhere may be. He already said, well, a lot of people are saying, like, does this mean we're going to have a snowy winter? Does this mean? And he's already stated a bit further down on his tweet, no, I don't make my winter prediction until November.
All
But
right.
nonetheless, nonetheless, he does say that October Eurasian snow cover extent is quite a bit above where it was at this time last year, which he reports as anemic. This year it's quite a bit of a different story.
Well, Roman, are we heading into a drought? Um, well, you know, this time of year, it's not like you're getting summer sun and no rain, where the ground is baked into cement. But that being said, I think the drought people were pointing out in New Jersey late last week that we've got they're back to uh, some abnormally dry or whatever that first level of drought is in parts of New Jersey. So we'll probably see more of that. Maybe what is it, Thursday they come out with the new map?
Yes, yes, that'll
All
be on
right,
Thursday
so
this
so
coming week.
Joe will cover that when we get to Thursday, assuming we have a show.
Vincent Croce says, "Listen, Joe and Joe. Big Joe B says dry, warm winter. Enough said. LOL."
You know how I feel about being a contrarian. Works for me. I will take the
And
others. I will, if enough people are doing that, I will gladly take the other side of the trade. So,
the old Farmer's Almanac, by the way, for our part of the country, the Northeast, mild and dry. That's what they're saying for
let them
this
all say
coming
it.
winter. Yeah.
It's actually very refreshing that they're not all, on the uh, cold and snowy Northeast yearly forecast that's been the case for the past, 40 years or however long. So, you know what? Let them keep going.
Yep.
Because you know, I've learned in the world of weather that it somehow it loves to find ways to embarrass the most people. And if everybody's coming out and saying it's going to be another non-winter and it doesn't wind up being, uh, that'll be fun to watch in my view. Okay, so Deshaun Stallings, thank you for hitting super chat. Says we have this blasé pattern. Can we get a snowstorm out of this if given a chance? Not with what the upper air looks like now. It's just all wrong for anything. I mean, eventually you'll probably start seeing your first snows up in where you normally would see it this time of year, maybe the central and northern Rockies and the higher elevations, and probably in parts of the Northwest and in Western Canada. But at the moment, ain't happening in the East, that's for sure. Speaking of snow, Joe, we could do a little Briller Jeopardy because I think I got the last one from Scott back on the 5th, and I don't think we did this. So, um, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
So, I think we were doing annual snowfalls before Milton came along, and so it's the annual snowfall in the following five cities. We'll start with Louisville.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes,
Okay. And
Louisville, Kentucky.
By the way, Joe, how do you pronounce the how do you correctly pronounce the capital of Kentucky?
Frankfurt.
You, you knew the,
Next.
yes. All right. All right. So Louisville. How about How about how about 10 inches?
Um, a little low, a little low. I'm trying to see if anybody on the chat board they're throwing numbers up. Like Rich Rothmansky throws up 17, John Melander throws up 16, Vincent Croce puts 11, and Northern Grace says 18. Christina Pedia and Chuck Cardillo just missed it at 13 because Frank Scalera gets it at 14. 14, Joe.
14. Okay.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. You know, everybody thinks Minneapolis, besides being cold, is very snowy, but that may not necessarily be the case. Um, I'm going to go with I'm going to go with 40 inches.
40 inches is, I would say substantially too low. Um,
Substantially too low. All right.
yes. S- seawater shark, cutwater shark. I'm not sure. Okay. 53. Um, very close. And Mike Waterhouse, you have 54. Close, but 53 is closer. And I'm trying to see who else. Rich Rothmansky said 54, and 53 is closer. I'm just seeing what everybody else. Anybody going to put the number up? Up. Northern Grace, 52. 52 is the answer.
Now you
Uh,
see, when I said, when you talk about Minneapolis, and people will probably be thinking, will probably thought 80, 90 inches, maybe even close to 100. So that was my reason to go down to 40. Now, you're right, it's substantially lower, but not by a tremendous amount. I mean, 52 still sounds like only 52
well,
for
you were
Minneapolis.
you were 20% too low.
All right. So,
Hmm. Nashville.
well, what did we say for Louisville again?
With
Six,
Louisville, we said 14.
14. Nashville, I was 12,
No, Rothmansky got it. It's 5.
5.
I always thought, because I think we've seen this pop up before. I always thought it was probably higher than that, but it's 5. New York City is measured at Central Park. Everybody should know it's this one.
And I would say what, 30 inches?
Ring the bell for yourself.
Thank you. 30.
30,
30.
30, up from it's always been around 30. Then they went to these 30-year averages and it dropped to 20. Then when the 10 years it one decade moves out, a new decade moves in, it went up to 25. So now we're at 30.
Well, having a decade like the 2010s where you had what, two or three 20-inch snowfalls or
Yeah,
20.
well, the whole period from 2000 to 2020 has skewed the number back up to the long-term average.
Can you imagine, Joe, if back in the 1970s somehow you or I were able to go back and talk to ourselves and tell them what to expect once we went to the turn of the century and talking about all these big snowstorms that we had? They
Yeah,
probably would try to lock us up.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably a cyclical thing. Oklahoma City is the final city tonight.
Ah, Oklahoma City. I will 10.
That's not a bad guess. It's a little high. But John Melander and Carol DeCara and Patrick Darcy hit it with 7. 7.
7.
And the last one is Barrow, Alaska.
Well, once again, like Minneapolis, you would say, "Oh my God, they probably get buried in snow," but I don't think that necessarily. Cold, yes. Snow, and I may be wrong with this too.
No, it's the North Slope of Alaska. You got a frozen Arctic. It's pretty dry. Not a whole lot
You
of
know,
moisture up there.
sometimes it gets too cold to snow.
Hmm.
Uh, I'll 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 say 50.
That's a good guess, actually, and it's not that far off. Everybody's all over the place. If you went above, like, and a number of you were putting numbers like 60, 70, and 80 is way out of line, way too high. Ed Lavash at 40 is closer. And I'm just trying to see some of these numbers here. Yeah, that's closer. But Frank R., Patrick Darcy, Mike Waterhouse, Bonsai, both at 45, just missed it. But Frank R. got it, 46,
Yeah.
46 inches. And don't forget, it can snow up there in May and June, as well as July and August and September. So, that's, when you think about it, that's spread out over 12 months. So, granted, they're going to get more of their snow during the time frame that it's turning colder and the Arctic is still not completely frozen. So, anyhow, on that particular note, um, I do have something I do want to say.
Uh-oh.
Can I say it?
Yeah, okay.
Actually, for those of you who follow me on Facebook, you probably have already read it, but I know a lot of you don't follow Facebook, and I didn't really post this anywhere else. I just posted it there because that's the platform where I spend some time on, although far less than what I used to. Because so anyway, I wrote this post. I'm going to read it, and this is all going, with respect to uh, what happened with Helene and with Milton, and uh, the subsequent uh, stuff that showed up on social media during and afterwards. You may have noticed, or perhaps you haven't, that I have been spending less and less time on Facebook, or as I like to call it, Rage Book. Over time, it has become such a poisonous place that I've decided that it's better for my own mental health to refrain from getting involved too much. I still post there. I still post links to my website, and when I'm doing my weather every day, and links for the videos, including this show. But I don't really engage very much with with the people that post comments. Not that I get bad comments. I just don't. I don't want to do that. So I haven't been. And I'm going to continue to minimize my engagement there. Um, anyway, just to continue, so I decided that it's better for my own mental health to refrain from getting involved too much. Helene and Milton sent it all into high gear. Facebook deliberately elevates posts with fake videos, AI altered content with no disclosure, by the way, and anything that drives rage and anger. I want no part of this. I wonder how many people and I had this conversation with Bill Goodman. I wonder how many people lost their lives due to misinformation on these hurricanes. Then there is the weather manipulation slash conspiracy crowd who have absolutely no understanding of basic science. Instead, they vent their anger in their own lives with fantastic stories about how the government is doing this for one reason or another. Now, every raindrop, every snowflake, every gust of wind, every natural disaster is orchestrated. These people should seek therapy. They are in desperate need of it. We are in a dangerous and sad place where reality is distorted to suit agendas. Operatives from foreign adversaries are all too happy to spread discord. Know what it is you're sharing. I can't emphasize that enough, folks. Know whatever it is you are sharing. Check the person who created the post before sharing links or videos. You can easily figure out whether something is authentic or not. If you have a question, you can ask the many reputable meteorologists who I think will be more than happy to let you know what's real and what isn't. Weather forecasting is difficult and sometimes very stressful in situations like Helene and Milton. If we as forecasters are spending more time debunking fake videos and conspiracy theories, we are spending less time helping people with decisions that could put their lives and property potentially in jeopardy. Finally, if you are one of these people who likes to troll weather pages, you'll just be blocked immediately. I have no desire to waste time with empty-headed conspiracy theories and politics. Take your business elsewhere. Um, to all my weather colleagues, you did an excellent job. Big kudos to NOAA, to the National Hurricane Center, who on their 5-day forecast for Milton, by the way, had landfall within 20 miles. I mean,
Yep.
that's astounding. Okay,
Yep.
in a 5 day time frame where the error could be a couple of 100 miles to nail it that close is just amazing. Local National Weather Service offices, the NOAA NWS Storm Prediction Center, the NOAA NWS Weather Prediction Center, and all the TV meteorologists in the Southeast U.S. and Florida for their work and sleepless nights away from your families. Good job. Also, to you, Mr. Rayo, because without you, it would only be the Joe Show, and you know that would not be fun.
Yeah.
And meteorologist Bill Goodman, a special thanks to him at NWS Upton, who is a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and he's always there around to come on and lend his expertise to us and to everybody that watches the show. And apparently, some people thought this was me my long was a long way for me to say goodbye. No, I'm not going anywhere. This is not a goodbye, but I felt it needed to be said, Joe. After when when I started reading the stories about people that colleagues of ours getting death threats from some people saying that they were controlling the storm and directing it where they were directing it to, and getting death threats. That crossed a big line for me. That's so. I mean that shouldn't happen. That just should not happen. It's horrible that there are people out there who are so deranged that they would do something like that. And you know the world we live in. Wouldn't shock me if something were to happen to somebody. I mean, I pray that it doesn't, but God, it certainly wouldn't. I don't think it would shock anybody if it did, because there's all these crazy people. And by the way, I'll give you a specific example. Um, of So somebody put up, now this is before, as Milton is approaching the Florida coast. Somebody put up a video, and what you're seeing is rain coming down. Okay, and when I looked at it, also hail. I checked with on SPC, and I noticed that there were no reports of any hail during all of this, even with all those tornadoes. But there was hail. And this person, was it was a woman's voice, and she had her son in the video who was also holding a phone and filming. Was the fact that the smoke was coming out of the ground, from where the hail was hitting the ground, smoke was coming out of it. So it was the point of it was that they were seeding the hurricane with dry ice, and that dry ice was making it to the ground. Okay, so I checked uh, I checked the poster. I pulled up their Facebook page, and lo and behold, it was an Alex Jones advocate. Okay, so right there, it was like, this is a doctored video. This was probably a video of hail falling in some sort of thunderstorm someplace, and with AI with AI, they somehow made it look like there was smoke coming out of the ground, and that it was, and the whole implication was that the government is out there seeding the hurricanes with dry ice. I mean, it's a very easy thing for everybody to do. And look, all of us get fooled by stuff that we've seen. But I've gotten into the habit of check immediately if I see something, uh, and I know it just doesn't feel right. I will look if I don't know the poster. If I know the poster, then that's one thing. But if I see something, I always check the poster to see who the person is, and if they're part of the conspiracy groups, it consumes all their lives. So they're going to tell you that on their Facebook page, right off the bat. So once I saw that, I was like, okay, well, we know that this is a fake. But it really, be very careful what you see and what you hear, what you read. Okay, and by the way, the social media companies have done zero, zero, absolutely nothing to stop this. And what really pisses me off is when I put up a video, when I put up a video on YouTube. I have to check off a box that says this was, it's not AI altered, that it's all me. Okay, it's not AI altered. I got to check a box. On Facebook, you're supposed to do the same thing. And I guarantee you, none of those people are, because I rarely see a disclosure that this video was created with with artificial intelligence. I think they're just posting it and they're not checking the disclosures because they know that Facebook will not get around to finding the fact that these are AI altered videos until maybe a year from now, or 2 years from now. So um, anyway, just that's my lesson for the day, everybody. Just make sure you know make sure you pay close attention to what you're seeing and what you're reading, because um, a lot of it is done, you know to, to make you mad, and that's just wrong. you know what are you going to do? Anyway,
It,
that's it. I wanted to get that out of my system.
oh, good. I'm glad you did.
hmm So there you go. So here we are. It's a Sunday night. I haven't had dinner yet. I want to watch the Giant game. So um, everybody have a great night. You have anything else to add?
Nothing. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:35.
Yes. And if you're watching this video and you're one of those, weather conspiracy people or whatever, whatever you want to call yourselves, don't bother to leave a message because I'm not going to respond to it. And if I, if you do put something up, I'm just going to block you anyway. So don't even waste your time. Okay? Night, night, everybody.
Good night, folks.